Well, good afternoon, Club 17, and welcome to our next virtual meeting. Today we're really excited to have Bob Oestreicher here with us from Tire Discounters. And I want to thank Bob, first of all, because we had him scheduled early in the month of March, but because of the pandemic, we had to cancel. So I really appreciate you being able to rearrange your schedule, Bob, and spending some time with us. So we really appreciate it. All right. Well, before we get into Bob's presentation, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about some things that are going on in the club. First of all, like every other company and organization in the entire globe, we're using Zoom to communicate these days. And we had our first Rotary After Hours happy hour last Friday night and had over 30 people that were on that call. And I have to admit, it was a lot of fun. We were on the call for probably at least an hour and a half and got to learn about everything that's going on with each one of the members that were present on that call. And I want to thank Sam Schutte for being the moderator, which was a tough job to keep us all quiet at the appropriate times. But I want to thank you, Sam, for doing what you did to make that happen. And we have another one coming up actually next Friday, May the 1st, which will be a Rotary After Hours, and it's going to be part of our Rotary Derby Week. So, and speaking of that, even though the Kentucky Derby was postponed, our Rotary Derby is going to go on. I think I mentioned this last week as well, but we're going to have a lot of different events taking place during the week of April the 27th, and including various Facebook postings that we can all do. And on Monday, we're going to be able to post our favorite Kentucky bourbon, which should be quite interesting. And on Tuesday, Derby Hat Day. So I expect everyone to get out their favorite derby hat, males, females included, and show it off on Tuesday. On Wednesday, our own favorite Molly Wellman is going to be making the perfect mint julep. So she's going to be doing that and posting that to Facebook as well. And on Thursday, we're actually going to have our virtual meeting at the Hilton. And their 4-star chef, George Zappis, is actually going to be doing a live cooking show. And he's going to be creating a Derby-themed dish right before our eyes that day. So that should be quite the event, one of a kind. And on Friday the 1st, as I mentioned, we're going to have our own Rotary Derby. And our own Jim Brooks is going to be our race track announcer. And he's actually going to be rolling dice and calling the race. And each one of our members actually was sent an email earlier today by Linda talking about the ability to purchase a horse. And you can purchase a horse for $10 and enjoy the fun along the way. But I believe there's 8 horses that are going to be in the field. And the number one pole position horse is our own favorite horse by the name of Everybody Loves Jack. And most people think that we're talking about Jack Daniels, but really that's not the case. It's our own Jack Berger, who he's my favorite, so I'm going to vote for him. We have a number of other horses that are entered into the field, so please respond to the email and get a hold of Christy, and you can actually purchase that horse and hopefully be in the winner's circle. So looking forward to that. I also wanted to shift in gears a little bit, talk a little bit about some of the wonderful service projects that we've been doing over the last few weeks and update you on the most recent one, which was the combination Girl Scouts, La Soup, and Cincinnati Public Schools Families Project. And we talked about this last week, but due to your amazing generosity, we've raised over $11,000 from members, and that has been matched by the club so that we have $22,000, which we're actually purchasing Girl Scout cookies from troops that are behind in their sales, and we're donating those to La Soup, who actually will be incorporating those into meals, which will then be delivered to those Cincinnati public school families that are in great need. So I have to admit that the unbelievable generosity never ceases to amaze me in this club, and there's no doubt that service above self is alive and well. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing there. We're also hitchhiking onto this project, and we're actually doing a public fundraising campaign on Facebook. So we're hoping to raise additional funds, which will again be matched by the club to even provide more support for those Cincinnati Public Schools families as well. So what an amazing project. Another project that is ongoing that I wanted to give an update is our Foundations project, which is the YMCA Community Heroes Dinner Project. And as you know, we're actually serving dinners to first responders whose families are have kids at the pandemic YMCA child care centers. And as they pick up their kids, they're able to take home meals for their entire family. And get this, through yesterday, we have almost served, just in 2 weeks, almost 4,000 meals. Pretty amazing. And I've got some breaking news for you as well. We actually applied for a district grant for this project, and just this morning we were communicated to that we got a district grant for another $7,000, which will provide an additional 600 meals to families in need. So that was amazing news that we got today, and it's perfect timing. And overall, I wanted to also say that along the way, we've had, through this whole pandemic crisis, we've had so many projects that have been designed to reach out to those that are in dire need. And because of your support, the support of our foundation, our club has donated almost $185,000. I'm going to say that again, $185,000 to support those in need. So, I can't tell you how proud I am to be a Cincinnati Rotarian, and I've received various emails and text messages from a number of other members who have echoed that same thing. So we're extremely proud to be able to do that to support those folks in need. So lastly, before I get into Bob's presentation, I wanted to update you on a few folks in our club. Unfortunately, Galen Gordon lost his father, who passed away this week. His father's name was Llewellyn Keith Gordon. So please keep Galen and his family in your thoughts and prayers. I also wanted to give you a quick update on our past president, Bud Dornetti. And unfortunately, he had a setback this past week, and after undergoing his second surgery, and he's developed an infection, which he's now receiving antibiotic treatments. So he's not quite able to take any calls yet, but please continue to pray for our buddy Bud and his wife Mary. And lastly, I'll give you a little bit of good news. Our Rotarian, John McCann, and his wife, Katie, actually celebrated the birth of their new daughter, Adeline Riley McCann. And she was born on April the 19th and weighed in at 7.1 pounds and 18 and a half inches. So congrats to John and Katie. And we look forward to seeing pictures very soon. So now I will introduce our speaker for the day. Bob Oestreicher actually joined Tire Discounters in October of 2012 as their vice president and general counsel. And in May 2016, he was promoted to senior vice president, corporate secretary, and chief legal officer. Hopefully that all fits on one business card, Bob. But Bob's a member of the executive leadership team, and he's played an instrumental role in leading both the legal and the real estate teams in achieving significant growth in the company during his tenure. And the founder and CEO, Chip Wood, who we've all heard on the radio over the years, describes one of Bob's key attributes as being a mentor coach and as helping cultivate future leaders. And he explains that people on Bob's team really love working with him, not just because of his vision and expertise, but also because of his ability to teach, train, and grow. So outside of his dedication to Tire Discounters, Bob's very busy in the community as well. He currently volunteers at the Jewish Federation of Cincinnati, the Easter Seals Group in the Tri-State, JVS Career Services, and the Jewish Community Relations Council. And he's also volunteered and worked with a number of other groups, including the Dan Beard Council's Professional Leadership Network, the MLB All-Star Game Committee, and he's also been honored to be part of Cincinnati USA Regional Chambers Leadership Cincinnati Program Class 39, and also was part of the Sea Change Leadership Program Class 6. And I believe you're a Cincinnati native, or at least part of your life, so graduated from Walnut Hills High School, went to the University of Illinois where he studied psychology and neuroscience, and then earned his law degree from Ohio State a few years back. So please give a warm Rotary virtual welcome to Bob Oestreicher.
It's really an honor to to be with you all. I'm thrilled to be able to talk about what I think is one of the great Cincinnati business stories. When Doug Bolton reached out to me back in January to see if I could get Chip Wood, our founder, to give this talk, and that original date in early March didn't work. I was pretty excited to be able to step in as his understudy, but I did have one small condition along the way, which was, despite my 7.5 years at Tire Discounters, I felt like it would probably be a little inauthentic if I were to give sort of the early days war stories of changing tires in the winters of the mid 70s out in the snow and losing lug nuts. So I asked if I could give a talk that was a little more geared towards the future of our business, the challenges we face from some of the disruptive factors that are taking hold in the automotive industry, and some of the opportunities we see. So with that, I'll start a little bit of presentation here. And it starts with just a little bit of historical context. So those are two pictures of Chip outside of store one. He is actually changing tires in the mid 70s there, and that's about the extent of war stories that I'll share. Chip founded Tire Discounters in 1976 at that one store, that single base store on Worcester Pike. And one interesting fact is that Chip closed on Sundays originally, and we still close on Sundays in order to be able to drive up every weekend in his truck with his brother Chris to Akron to pick up inventory to drive back down to be able to sell tires the following week. We are now at 131 stores in 10 major markets, and in my 7+ years at Tire Discounters, we've more than doubled our store count, doubled our number of employees, and doubled our annual revenue. So it's really been a rocket ship ride. And notably, in 2019, last year, we reached more than 1 million tire sales in a year for the first time. And I can assure that that's more than would have fit in Chip's old truck. So now, with that strong footing and that historical context, we face an uncertain future, and now more than ever. In particular, there are a number of disruptive forces that are taking hold in the automotive industry. And it's always fun to start with an acronym. Ours is RACE, which stands for Ride Sharing, Autonomy, Connectedness, and Electrification. And it's important to note that these disruptive factors have impact that are far beyond the automotive industry, and I'll touch on that a little bit, but they definitely have a big impact on us. So starting with ride sharing, everybody is aware and familiar with Uber and Lyft. That's really the dispatch and monetization end of ride sharing, and that's been perfected. So what does that mean for the future? If you see the chart here, it really is what it looks like. It's a tidal wave in terms of an impact on individual vehicle ownership. So this chart shows the next 30 years essentially of share of miles driven by individually owned vehicles versus rideshare miles. And this is done by the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, and it shows basically a 90-10 split now of individually drive miles versus rideshare miles to basically 100-0 split in 30 years. So what that means is that mobility, what we consider car ownership now, where you go out and buy this durable good and use it, and it's an asset that you own, will go away. It will become a service that you summon as you need it. And for Tire Discounters, that impacts what we call our fleet business, which is essentially our business-to-business channel, which right now is primarily big business accounts with rental car companies or a plumbing company with a fleet of trucks. But in the future, we see that becoming a much bigger share of our business with robo-taxi fleets, autonomous robo-taxis with autonomous delivery vehicle fleets, which will become more prolific. I think most people are familiar have some level of familiar with the development of autonomous vehicles. You'll hear level X autonomy, that term thrown around a lot. So I'll do a quick rundown of what the levels of autonomy are, but really it's important to know that level 0 through 2 plus are essentially what's in production now, and level 3, 4, and 5 are what is in development and forward looking. So level 0 is basically any car before the 1990s. Level 1 is basically all cars to some degree since the 1990s. So cars that have anti-lock braking systems, cars that have electronic cruise control. Level 2 are most new cars now, which come standard with advanced systems like collision avoidance and lane keep assist, those types of systems. And then level 2 plus is really the cutting edge that you'll read about right now, like Tesla Autopilot or Chevrolet Super Cruise, which offers some level of autonomy, though not truly classified as even partial autonomy yet. That's level 3, where the vehicle has some temporary control. It can take over driving in the city or on a highway, but it requires an occasional intervention from a human. And then level 4 and 5 are capable of full autonomy, and the only difference is that in level 5, a human can't drive the car whatsoever. There's no steering wheel or brake or accelerator. So for us, what's important is the disruption that will come from 4 and 5 ultimately. And a couple of years ago, there was a very aggressive timeline and a lot of hype for when we would get to 4 and 5. Even Chevrolet a few years ago, I think in 2017, promised a level 5 car in production by the end of 2019, and that surely didn't happen. What we've seen is that those aggressive timelines were stretched out considerably. So what does the rollout or the transition to level 4 and 5 autonomy, which is the consensus is that it's probably 10 plus years away, what does it look like in the meantime? And I think that's a plateau of level 2 plus and 3 autonomy. In particular, it's the integration of many ADAS systems as standard features on cars. And ADAS is Advanced Driver Assistance System. And it's, again, like automatic braking or collision avoidance or lane center keep. Go down the list, and every maker calls them something different. That proliferation of ADAS has a huge potential for disruption for tire discounters, as much as the disruption that level 4 and 5 autonomy might have for the overall economy. I'll kind of breeze through the C in our acronym, connectedness. It doesn't have a huge impact on tire discounters, but it is important. This is how vehicles in the future talk to each other and talk to infrastructure in order to be able to run as efficiently as possible. You can read about how cars will drive at 110 miles per hour, 2 feet from each other in the future. That's all enabled by this connectedness, and it's probably the most concrete future application of 5G networks, which you hear all about 5G. But I will make a quick pit stop to talk about intra-vehicle connectedness. So right now, there are plenty of smart sensors in your car, air pressure monitors for your tire, oil level monitors that will prompt service. But if you look at the tire itself, the actual rubber of a tire, it's about as dumb as you get right now. But in development are sensors that will detect tread wear, uneven tread wear, and prompt service similar to what your air pressure monitor will do now. And those have the potential to drive future business for us, and again, are important. And then the final letter in our acronym, E, is for electrification. And 2020 was supposed to be the year of the electric vehicle. And it was following on momentum from the last few years. In particular, 2019, electric vehicle sales doubled compared to the prior year. Still a drop in the bucket compared to internal combustion, but there were huge gains in electric vehicle sales. And almost all the manufacturers were creating new models, electric-only models, for release in 20 and 21. That probably has, the hype there has died down a little bit due to the current crisis we're in. I think that will impact electric vehicle sales for certain, but new car sales overall. So it puts a little bit of damper on this. That said, electric vehicles are coming. And for us at Tire Discounters, the key equation there is that electric vehicles have fewer moving parts by a factor of 10 compared to internal combustion vehicles. And that could mean less service, though we like to think that it's probably just we have to gear towards different service. So electric vehicle requires no oil change. There's no timing belt or spark plugs. There's very few brake jobs because most of the braking is done by regenerative braking. But there are other service opportunities. More torque that's produced by electric motors actually wears tires quickly, so that can mean that we're replacing tires more frequently, and more business for tire discounters. And then I mentioned before these ADAS systems, which require calibration, pretty frequent calibration and resetting, and that sort of falls in tire discounters' DNA. You've heard our tagline before that we're the home of the free alignment. That's a cornerstone of our company. And when it comes down to it, ADAS calibration essentially is advanced alignment. These ADAS systems rely on knowing where the car is going to be, which requires the car to be properly aligned and the cameras that drive these ADAS systems to be aligned with the car. And so we see that as a potential game changer for us and a point of differentiation from our competition, and certainly positioning that we're positioned to lead the pack when it comes to ADAS. So I mentioned before that there's going to be disruption from autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles beyond just the automotive industry. And I'll just touch on a couple of these quickly. The first being public health, in particular vehicle safety. So there are about 40,000 deaths each year from motor vehicle crashes. 94% of those are attributed to human error. And even the most conservative estimates show that autonomous vehicles could reduce that number by 25%. Many are much more bullish. That's 10,000 fewer deaths every year, making it just a public health imperative. And this is not just projections and pie in the sky type of stuff. From ADAS already, implementation of ADAS systems, we've seen side swipe crashes down by double digits. That's due to side assist systems like the little blinking light that's in your side view mirrors. And rear end crashes are down by 39%, which is due to automatic braking and collision avoidance systems. And this has big impact right now on body shops. They've seen a big drop in business due to these systems becoming more prevalent. And then the other thing in terms of disruption generally that I want to mention is with every great invention comes some losers, some businesses that are eliminated. And I think we're going to have, as a society, have to be mindful that as autonomous vehicles proliferate, there are going to be some victims from a business standpoint. I think one of the first of those will be over-the-road truck drivers. I think that's an industry that will be pretty much wiped out, and that is much more a near-term prospect than the 10+ years that we see for level 4 and 5 autonomy in consumer vehicles. And really, aside from that, the sky's really the limit. There's plenty written about the potential for autonomous vehicles in changing our society, and it's fascinating. And so I want to kind of drill down though and talk about our industry and tire discounters in particular. So what is the impact of these three big disruptors on tire discounters? The first, ride sharing, that really drives who is our customer. Is it an individual or is it a business or a fleet? Autonomy, where is our customer? So does a self-driving car with no human in it care if our shop is on a Kroger outlot, or does it care if our shop is even connected to a showroom at all? Those are considerations we have to bring into our growth plan as we make investments that we look out 20, 30, 40 years on. And then finally, electrification, what services do our customers need? So electric cars require different services, as we talked about, than internal combustion cars, and that requires us to tool up for a different service suite. So we're making changes right now and planning to take advantage of what we see coming. the coming to our customer bullet there, those are two pilots that we're running to basically separate our shop from our showroom, anticipating that cars might go a different place than the customers go for service. And you can go to Blue Ash right now at Cooper or at Cornell and Reed Hartman. There is a tire discounters in a strip center that has no shop attached to it. It's just a showroom that we essentially dispatch customers' vehicles from. The customers will drop their vehicle off there, order their service, and then we will take that vehicle to a store that has capacity, a shop that has capacity to perform the work. There's also an impact on how we look at real estate on a long-term basis. So we self-develop most of our new tire discounters stores. These are very long-term investments for us. So if we're building a store right now that we intend to have open for the next 40 years, all the changes that I've mentioned in terms of level 4 and 5 autonomy, electrification, reduction of individual vehicle ownership, all of these are going to be in place in that 40-year time period, no matter how conservative of a timeline you look at. So we have to look at that in terms of making these investments right now. And then finally, ADAS is really an area of opportunity and growth for us. And again, it really matches with Tire Discounters' DNA with respect to providing alignments to our customers. But importantly, we have to balance all of this against what is still a very proven business model, customers that we truly care about, and it's certainly still very lucrative to us. So it's how do you plan for the future while still taking care of people in the present. And then I added a real quick slide. Originally supposed to present this pre-COVID, but obviously that's impacting every business. So I thought I'd mention a few things here. So first, Tire Discounters has been incredibly fortunate. Every state we operate in, we're considered, automotive repair is considered an essential business. And we take that as a responsibility. And part of that is making sure that people are safe on the road, but it's also, we need to make sure that our customers and employees are safe in our stores and warehouses. And we've done a tremendous amount of work to make sure that we hit that goal. Included in that, and looking back a couple slides, is our acceleration of several pilot programs that were part of our future looking efforts, trying to plan for these disruptors, but they ended up being excellent ways to keep our customers and employees safe by creating distance between our customers and employees. Online check-in, text to pay, curbside service, pick up and drop off. All these were pilot programs that we rolled out in 5 weeks, and it's just been an amazing effort by our team. And then finally, with every crisis comes some opportunity. And for us, we see that retail real estate has already been in an area that's been tenuous, and I think this is going to really impact the cost of that real estate in a way that's positive for a buyer like we are. So we look to come out of this in full growth mode again. And finally, I'd like to conclude on a positive note. So as I mentioned, Chip started this company 44 years ago in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is where we're born and raised. And we are really excited to make one of the company's biggest investments ever back in Cincinnati. We purchased a building in downtown Cincinnati at 4th and Elm that we have demoed to the studs on the interior, and we are completely renovating it to house our offices, about 35,000 square feet. We'll relocate all 100 plus of our office workers with room to grow there, and we can't wait to share it with the rest of the community. So with that, it's been a real honor again to share what I think is one of the great business stories in Cincinnati. And Dave, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Well, thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it. And we did have a few questions that got supplied to us in advance. So I wanted to briefly ask those for you and have you respond. So first off, and this question was brought to us by Ken Saunders, but he says, how do you differentiate your company when there's a new player in town, such as Discount Tire, that I'm sure confuses everyone?
That's a really interesting question. So Discount Tire actually is a much bigger company and an older company than ours. And they always avoided Cincinnati for whatever reason. But I think we poked the sleeping dog a few too many times in our other markets when we entered new markets where they were. And they decided to enter our hometown. The way we differentiate ourselves is with Discount Tire in particular. Is Discount Tire is more of a price play. So they compete with Costco and Walmart, where you go to buy the cheapest tires you possibly can to get them thrown on, and that's it. You leave. They don't do any other service. They don't do alignments, and it's a pretty spare experience. Tire Discounters is more of a full service value play. There's definite differentiation. It's how we communicate that to our customer. Fortunately, in Cincinnati, everybody knows Tire Discounters, and I think we have a leg up there based on our reputation. There is a very funny video that went viral from Mount Juliet, Tennessee, where we built a Tire Discounters right next door to a Discount Tire. Excuse me, I even get confused. This gentleman with a very thick accent was confused himself. So I urge you to go check it out. It's pretty easy to find.
Sounds good. We've all heard of this Phantom Tire Buyer ad campaign. So who was the genius behind that?
Gosh, well, that's top secret. I wish I could answer that, but I'd have to divulge his true identity, which I'm certainly not allowed to do. So good try, but I can't do it.
All right, maybe next time. And finally, you spent a lot of time talking about the future and how you're preparing for the future, which is admirable, obviously, with all the technology changes. But what are the longer term implications, if any, that the COVID crisis might have on on auto travel in general? And that question was delivered by John Farmeyer.
So that's a great question, and we've, as we've been kind of running to address, the challenges of this COVID crisis, we've been thinking about what it's going to look like on the other side for us. And I think we're pretty confident that people are going to come out of this, with a fear of air travel, founded or not. People are going to be afraid to go back on planes, at least for a period of time. It's something our industry saw after 9/11. Which obviously has the follow-on effect of more vehicle miles driven and more automotive service, which is a good business proposition for us. But I think this one's different in that everybody's cooped up in their homes, giving Zoom interviews from their dining rooms, and they're ready to get out. And when the coast is clear, I think the first thing that a lot of people are going to want to do is drive to visit family, drive to the next nearest town to just get away for a bit. And I think that's going to be a boon to the automotive service industry. So thanks. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm going to hitchhike onto that one. It's not on our script, but you have obviously the legal responsibility for the organization. Are there any legal implications that you need to be thinking about as a result of the crisis?
Oh, there are a million. I think the biggest one, I mentioned before that we're really fortunate to be an essential business. And in particular in Ohio, the governor has really left it to the essential businesses that have remained open to try and create the best practices for how we deal with the COVID crisis and how we social distance in commerce and all those things. And that's really been, I think, there's a legal challenge baked into that, in that there's no clear guidance on how to avoid liability. So you really just have to do the best that you possibly can and balance factors. And I think we've done a ton. It started off being really scrappy, We put tire barrel stacks in front of our showroom counters so that we maintain the 6-foot distance between our customers and our employees. But ultimately, we've really tried to dive in and do everything that we possibly can, even things that aren't necessarily applicable to automotive repair shops, like limiting occupancy, that sort of thing, to make sure that we play it safe from a liability standpoint, but also really just to ensure the safety of our customers and employees.
Very well stated. So, hey, Bob, I really appreciate you being here today, and thanks to Tire Discounters for having such an amazing presence in this region for over 40 years. And I love the story about Chip having to drive to Akron to pick up tires. That kind of paints a vivid picture. But certainly it's no accident that Tire Discounters is the fastest growing tire dealer in the Midwest and one of the 10 largest in the entire country. So congratulations for all your success, and we really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, David. It's been my pleasure.
In our particular case, you may know of Rotary, that one of our international causes is to eradicate polio from the face of the earth. And we started this back in the late 80s, and there are over 350,000 new cases each and every year. And so we've been working on it very, very hard around the world, and have a lot of great partners like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who have given a lot of money to help us in this fight, and other partners. But we're really making a huge dent. We're down to just several dozen cases around the world, primarily in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And the reason I'm telling you this is I want to make you be aware that we're going to be making a donation to the End Polio Now campaign in your honor for being here today. So I certainly appreciate your being here today and giving that awesome presentation. And we look forward to hopefully catching up with you sometime in the near future.
Thanks. That means a lot.
Sounds good. Well, Rotarians, we accomplished one more virtual meeting, a couple of hiccups, but we're getting better each and every week. So I wanted to again thank Bob for being with us. And our meeting next week, as I mentioned, is going to be even a different meeting. We're trying to create a varied schedule, and we're going to be in the kitchen of the Hilton, watching our Hilton chef, George Zappas, prepare a meal in a cooking show environment. So it should be quite the virtual meeting. So with that, go out and make it a great week, and we'll look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Take care, everyone. Meeting adjourned.